So hi, I'm back with another video. And yesterday I had the pleasure to interview a guy who's an elder in our community. Started some festival way back in the day. Started a couple of things that still go on to this day. So you'll see that in this interview, first of all, it's a little choppy because I took a break and I'm a little rusty again. But also, James had a opportunity to read the questions that I was going to ask him. And so I don't do a whole lot of talking in this one. Um, so I hope you enjoy meeting Mr. James Spake. Here we go.
Hey, hello, my name is James Spake, S-P-A-K-E. I have to spell it for people, it's okay. I'm 75 as of July 20th. The same day they walked on the moon is my birthday. They did that on purpose, I think. I made that up. This is kind of combining the first two questions, who am I and how did I get here, if you will. Or three, anyway, several questions. I've lived in the Portland area for, well, let's see, since 1975. With about 10 years out of that in different chunks at the coast, but I'm a Northwesterner all the way around, born in Seattle. So most of my involvement as an adult has been in the Portland area, which makes sense to me, of course. So let's talk about before. My parents had mythology books for us kids, young people's mythology books in the household when I was growing up. And I devoured those. I loved those. I was particularly drawn to the Nordic mythologies, a little more mysterious, a little darker than the standard Greco-Roman that was, presented at that time. So that was fine. I was brought up in the Episcopal Church. I was a pretty significantly devout Episcopal young churchman person. In the early 60s, graduated from high school in 64. And, we were going to go out there and help improve the world, right? Boomer generation. And then I went to college, university. And during the course of that time, I took a history of Christianity course. First one semester, because it met a religion requirement at Willamette University, which was a Methodist school. And I was intrigued enough, I took the second semester as well. And I came away from my history of Christianity course, along with philosophy classes and stuff, saying, that's basically all politics. That's not real spiritual revelation in terms of the history of the Christian church and whatnot. So I turned pretty dramatically away from that. And put myself in the category of agnostic. I don't know. I still don't know. These days, I mostly use working hypotheses as opposed to I know this of something. Anyhow, so that was true, and eventually I ended up putting myself, and there's more story there, in the category of earth-oriented spirituality, which comes into the heading of the neo-pagan thing. And for a long time, I've told people I'm a free pagan. That means I can believe whatever I want, not stuck to a particular pantheon or ideology. Although I've also gone through Gardnerian Wiccan training and initiation up through third degree. So that's also a part of what I've done, but I've not really stayed within the narrow boundaries of Gardnerian Wicca. I'm more of a broader pagan person. So here I am in college, right? University in the mid 60s and on, and English major. It turns out we read T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, which has a lot of references to the Tarot, as you may know. As a result of doing the research around that for papers and whatnot, I read a book by a person named Jesse Weston called From Ritual to Romance, because the Wasteland has a lot of Grail stuff in it. And From Ritual to Romance, it ties in the Grail legend and the fertility religions, pre-Christian, and so on. So, oh, that's intriguing. And another one of those books that was listed, that was Mircea Eliade's The Myth of the Eternal Return, which is the dying and reborn Savior God form. Which, and then there's the whole cycles, the cycles of the ritual cycles that mirror the natural cycles of vegetation and or hunting and or livestock, so on and so forth. So, okay, this sounds really good. And that got me fascinated. I got my first tarot deck when I was in the Air Force. We did a field trip to New Orleans and I got a tarot deck. And so that, again, so now it's like the snowball coming off the top of the mountain. It starts to cascade into eventually an avalanche. So I would put myself actually in the consciously and conscientiously pagan arena, probably from about 1980 on. I mean, I was reading and so on and so forth before that, as I mentioned. But my mom lived in Seattle up on Capitol Hill, and on a trip to a bookstore up there, Broadway Books, I stumbled on a couple of books. One was called The White Goddess by Robert Graves, and another was a black-covered, silver-lettered for the title, Book of Pagan Rituals from Weezer Press. And it didn't have a listed author, intriguingly enough. But I saw this and I said, oh, okay. So, and also at this point, my university spouse and I had separated and I was on my own, probably clinically depressed, but who knew at that point? Anyway, so I'm jumping into this stuff and I'm living out in the country at this point, which I did after the Air Force. And we had animals, sheep, ducks, chickens, the whole thing. And then when I was out there by myself now with my former spouse gone. So I'm really kind of getting into the nature thing and being outdoors and paying attention, a little less distracted, and saying, yeah, this is where it's happening for me. And then I also then found two more books that made a big difference. The Spiral Dance by Starhawk, which really kicked me into high gear in terms of, okay, let's do the ritual components of this. And Drawing Down the Moon by Margot Adler, which said, oh, this stuff's going on all over the place. And oh, that's very interesting. So here we are. And then through a periodical that was available locally then, Willamette Week, it's still around. They had personal ads in those days. And so I kept reading ads for a pagan newsletter called, hello, I just went away. Well, anyway, put out by something called the Northwest Pagan Association. And there's a woman named Shenanigans who was in Sheridan. And so she had this newsletter that you could get, and said, okay, so now we're getting into more local, like contacts with real people. And so I subscribed to that newsletter, the Elven Stone, that's what it was, newsletter. And then there was also, and I put a couple of ads in saying, have you read these books? I'm intrigued, and didn't get much response. But I also saw an ad that I responded to from someone who was saying, yes, mythology, and I'd like to get people together to study mythology. And it was a gentleman named Mark Van Dyke who I joined up with. And later on, we ended up founding the Pacific Northwest Equinox System. Yeah, which we'll get to that in a little bit. So anyway, we started writing, and I went to a couple of events, one in Salem and one in Sheridan, and actually one down in Eugene, as a result of this newsletter, and met Sorsha and so on, and met a young woman who also attended one of these, whose name was Patrice, later on Patrice Hawkwood, who, with Mark and I, were three of the founding members again of the Equinox Festival. And interesting. So we all ended up coming together at the Central Portland Library and had a big gathering of people who were interested in mythology and paganism and a public pagan festival. And it all whittled down to a core group that ended up deciding that, well, we're going to put a festival on for the public. And we picked the fall equinox because there were no other major events going on around that, as there usually are for midsummer and Samhain and so on. And it was far enough away, we could plan for it, and close enough to not be too far away that we would lose all our enthusiasm. So that's why we picked it, not for any major spiritual reason. It was convenient. But it's a nice balance.
What year was that, James?
Gosh, I believe that the first actual festival was held in '84.
Okay.
But either '83 or '84, and I'm confused about that. Anyhow, so from like 1980 and beyond, I was actually involved in this. And then Patrice and I, we actually, using that book of pagan rituals, which were drawn from Gardnerian and other things, we did a mutual co-initiation into the whole pagan path, if you will. Said, neither one of us were, so yeah, but we said, I want to be, and you want to be, so let's just all officiate, initiate you, officiate, initiate me, and there we are. So that was pretty cool. And it always had in my imagination, going back, I think, to high school, I could imagine a religion where, I just imagined people gathering under the full moon, raising silver knife blades up to the moon and wearing black, and thinking, oh, okay, this could work. So there we are. So now we're in the early '80s, and I'm pretty much headed in this direction, and found myself basically doing a lot of just solo work out there, but lived out in the country, lived 9 miles out of Oregon City, Beaver Creek. So I was out in the woods and the creek and the pond, and really immersing myself in that in a way that I hadn't before, and really opening up and doing meditation out into the trees in the wilder part, and that made a big difference in my situation. So I think that's taken us through the first few questions.
It has taken us all the way down to, like, this question about now, kind of a general, how has it affected your life?
And how am I involved these days?
Right. Yeah. What are you doing these days? I mean, we only got out to the 80s.
Yeah. What have you done for me lately? Actually, so this core group that was Mark Van Dyke, myself, Patrice, later known as Hawkwood, and Diana Tuttle, whom I have not kept track with, a gentleman named Arthur, whose last name I've lost, and John Miller, were sort of the key launching group for the first Equinox Festival. And we got more people then involved. And then Mark stepped back from the second one. It was Patrice and Diana and myself, and then John joined. And we made ourselves sick, practically, because we were doing it all by ourselves. I stepped back from the next couple and then started attending again, but my life was gone on in different directions and so on. So I was never really a motive force in the Equinox Festival, other than that initial burst. But I've been tied to it ever since, in part because I did end up getting married and having children, and we took our kids to the festivals and so on. So from Beacon Rock at the beginning, 7 years, I believe, we were there, and then I missed a couple of the ones that were in different places. I was one at the park up the Clackamas River.
Oxbow?
Anyway.
No.
Yeah, Oxbow. I was at that one where we had Janet and Stuart Farrar and so on. And so now I'm getting connected with other people that are around. I remember at Brian and Lorraine's house on the river, in Oregon City, taking my daughter Morgana for her first birthday. We had a gathering in the basement in a circle, and she's dancing around and so on. So really kind of interwoven with all of this at that point. So now I'm retired. I'm not part of any active working groups, pretty much solitary, if you will. I still attend community events. Pumpkin carving and Yule have been big ones, and our friends Chrissy and Craig, who aren't going to be able to do that basically post-COVID plague years. But it's all been a very amazing journey. I just had my 75th birthday, as I said, in July, and I had a kind of mini potluck gathering for coffee and donuts up in the park here. And turns out I discovered that I've been having a birthday gathering outside in the park every decade for the last 40, 50, 60, 70. Well, and I said, okay, but pushing it till 80 is kind of risky. So I better go for 75. Wait till 80. And so, yeah, and I actually talked to some of these people because we've been acquainted with each other and interactive for 30, somewhere between 30 and 35 plus years. And so it's really interesting to see these folks and then another generation coming along as well. So I'm not doing much except being sort of the elder observer these days, although making contributions with some archive stuff to Michael AD for his history project. Okay. So we decided we're going to put on this festival. We had like 36 people at Beacon Rock, first one. And at the same time, the four of us are looking to find a house to live in together. And we'll have a temple and the whole 9 yards. Well, Diana dropped out of that, but we did find a house for 3 of us, Mark, Patrice, and myself. And it was originally the Temple of Chthonic Mysteries, then it was the Temple of Goddess Mysteries. And we started a newsletter. And originally it was unnamed, untitled, but then it became the Burning Times newsletter. And we subscribed to the Charlie Murphy thing, Never Again the Burning. So we were, putting out news and events of what was going on in the days of typewriters and cut and paste and photocopy. And actually, I still have some of those original cut and paste copies and so on, and Michael now has. So there are some actual records of that. We were only together in that house for a year, then we went in separate directions, and everybody's life went on from there. But we were kind of the first festival for the public, although we kind of trailed Sister Spirit by being active in the community. They were having gatherings before we were. And also, we were tied into the Portland Gnostic Church with Nestor Perala, and we did joint pagan and Gnostic events, seasonal celebration events, and cross quarters and such. So it was a very rich and fertile period. So all that, and then I ended up getting married, raising children, and moved away, and so on, and so was not part of the ongoing. The Equinox Festival was hosted by the Alternative Spiritual Association, which was us, but then that kind of fragmented for a number of reasons, including me being gone, and eventually it was handed on to other people, which became the now 9 Houses of Gaia, and so on and so forth, which you'll cover in other conversations. Subsequently, I became a massage therapist and doing shamanic studying. So again, pretty much self-directed. Most of my pagan spirituality influenced my hypnotherapy work that I did with clients. Oh, and I'm a Reiki master. So I'm doing energy work. It's all part of the same fabric. The hypnotherapy training that I had involved a lot of Jungian and shamanic concepts and practices. So it's all of the same fabric. And I did that for a long time until I then kind of retired. So I'm kind of coasting on Uh, Way ancient glories, but long-term recognition. So I'm not hanging out with a lot of these people a lot of the time, but it's, oh yeah, we've been seeing each other incidentally for 37 years, but who's counting?
Well, you mentioned Morgana's first birthday, and I have to bring back to light that in the last big event pre-COVID for the Fall Equinox Festival, she played Dionysus.
Yeah,
So here's this child that grew up in
right.
the community, and my daughter and your daughter were close friends back when they were children, and they still kind of hang out once in a while. But so that tells me that you and I have been seeing each other for lifetimes.
There you go.
Yeah, at least one lifetime, at least one's
Yeah,
children's lifetime.
one full generation.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I didn't actually get involved with the other people until I was in my early 30s. So anyway, you
Yeah.
asked about an anecdote or an incident.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I'm assuming that most people that will watch this will have some awareness of the larger context within which we're talking. So,
Yeah,
so,
let's make that assumption.
so a group of us were gathered up in Maryhill at the Stonehenge to do a ritual, like you do.
Great, that's what it's for.
Yeah, and because it's a little distant to commute all the way to Britain. And actually, when I did go to the British Isles, the public was not allowed into Stonehenge. They opened it up again, but I couldn't get to go in there. But I got to travel all over Avebury and some other circles, standing stones. That's the other thing. In the right after our first Equinox festival, I had a stroke of fortune that allowed me to go to the British Isles on a 6-week backpack walkabout and Brit Rail Pass and so on. It's the only anyway. And I went. If I had gone earlier, I would have gone probably in a literary thing as an English major, but I went mostly for standing stones and stone circles and sacred places. And so don't tell anybody, but I actually spent the night on Glastonbury tour, which you're not supposed to do.
There's only
And
40 people on my channel that nobody will know.
Which was exciting and less comfortable and not necessarily heavily mystical. So I'm in my sleeping bag in my tube tent or my backpack up there, and it's wind and there's grit blowing around because it's worn granite and so on. And okay, so I'm doing my little mini ritual, and so cakes and wine. I did happen to have some Scottish oatcakes that I had brought up there, and a little Scotch whiskey, and so I did my libation and had my little whatever. So I was jumping through the hoops anyway. Even though it wasn't the most profound. This was on a full moon, by the way. I got to say, this was the first night of the full moon. Then I left there and ended up going down out of Penzance in Cornwall, and there's another stone circle that I snuck out of my bed and breakfast in the middle of the night and trekked over to for the last night of the full moon. And these are low stones, but this one was much more atmospheric. Anyway, ended up coming back to Glastonbury for a big group Samhain event there, which was really
cool.
nice. So anyway, but anecdote that I find locally intriguing. So we're up at Maryhill, and so we're all wearing garb of some sort, and I had a flannel Celtic check robe, if you will, and it's just a poncho type thing with a belt, right? So it's fringed and hanging around and so on. And apparently got in one of the movements around our circle, got too close to a candle. So all of a sudden I'm being informed that my robe is aflame. And so we're attempting to put it out, and someone grabs the chalice from the altar, and I'm saying, no, don't waste the wine. So we had to put it out without pouring the wine on. So that's my humorous anecdote. Don't waste the wine.
Don't waste them. I hope that I'm assuming that your robe outfit was not salvageable at the end of
Oh
that.
no, it was fine. It was only a lower portion of the fringe and the hem and stuff. So it didn't get serious. It just got exciting. Of course, you don't know it's not going to get serious, so you take it seriously. And they were going to douse it with the wine, and I no, don't waste the wine. And of course, that was an impulse, not necessarily a thoughtful response. But I was joshed about that henceforth. Yeah, there's old James, don't waste the wine on fire person. So that's that.
Well, you know, it's hard to get wine up to that Stonehenge site to begin with. So yeah.
I mean, there's a parking lot, and we just, checked in with our gear. As you know, we are. Okay, another funny story. Speaking of gear, because we're not known for traveling light, this community, because we are also into basically LARPing, costume and performance and ritual drama and so on and so forth. So people have lots of stuff. And this is not meant as a disparagement, but it just is an observation that there's one other religious group in the country that tends to have more stuff when they go out in the world. And that's the Latter-day Saints. And the reason I say that in particular is because one year at Beacon Rock, probably maybe your third or fourth, I don't know, fifth, somewhere in there early on, but not totally towards the end. The early people out there helped setting up. We're out there, we've arrived, and we're getting things oriented and organized. And we start seeing these big old station wagons coming in with kids. Oh, children were not allowed at the early festivals. Because at that time, if you think back to the satanic ritual abuse, recovered memory scare era of the 80s, we were in the middle of that context, and people are running around theatrically in various kinds of garb or less, and children can be taken away from their parents for being witnessing the kind of shenanigans that innocent shenanigans that and jumping over fires without wanting to catch the robe on fire, so you don't wear the robe, you jump over the fire. But having, that was a big scary thing. So we didn't allow children. Also, none of the founders had children, which made it too. So that's all evolved, of course. But so anyway, so we're watching these big station wagons coming in, loaded to the gills with gear and children. And we're going, huh. So we don't know these people. And, there are people arrive at a festival that you don't know, but these are like, oh, we don't know any of these people. So we talked to the ranger, and they go, oh, our bad. We double booked you guys with, so there's the Pagan Equinox Festival. And of course, we were kind of on the down low, if you will, in what we were doing. And the other group was a Mormon group camp out thing. But because we had been there for a few years and we had a positive record, because we always left the site cleaner than we found it and so on, they were shuttled off to a different group area, much to our relief. But that was funny.
That is funny. Double booking with the Mormons.
Anyhow. So let's see. Oh, okay. Has all of this shenanigans affected me in any way? Actually, in a particular situation, a group of us were doing, again, initiations into a particular, not a major sectarian thing, but just a small local process. And so one of the questions that was asked of the person who's wanting to join this little quest was, okay, why do we play these silly games? And the answer was, because we have to, or we need to, or I need to. I need to. I have to. I really want to, and so that ties. They're calling them silly games because they're done very earnestly, but it ties into the pagan, neo-pagan theme of the Northwest that runs throughout the whole thing. Is that this is too important to just take seriously? No, really. So as a result, we had such ritual groups as initiation into the Order of Bill the Cat, which was a silly, not inversion, but a silly formulation based on the same structural elements of the serious spiritual work that we were doing. But the whole idea is lighten up and laugh. And you're going to be more spiritually authentic if you are taking yourself and these things lightly rather than just being heavily burdened by them. So that's a component of it that I really appreciate, which actually ties in nicely with your next category of how has this affected my mental health.
I want to get back to this question about the Bill the Cat ritual. I've witnessed it. I've partaken of it. Who wrote it?
I don't know.
Oh.
I was not I was not one of the initial people. I was taken in subsequently at a fall Equinox festival, somewhere between between the main ritual and a men's Dionysian event. There was a Bill the Cat thing, and we drank warm flat beer and ate goldfish crackers, and we went ack.
Right.
That did in the comic strip by Burke Breathed, which was Opus the Penguin, and I forgot the name of the original strip, but anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. So that's the nice thing is that all these people that I've known over the years, for this is a serious spiritual path and undertaking. And the community component of it is, well, hardworking, lighthearted. And I really like that a lot. It's sort of anti-puritanical, if you will. You know, the old, grim up. This is serious. No, lighten up. This is too important to be just done seriously. Or gloomily, anyway.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, shadow work is its own thing, and that's another topic. But in terms of devotional and celebrational, we're more about kick up your heels and frolic and laugh.
So what do you think it has done for your mental health?
Except for the weird spells I go through, it's fine. No, I think it's been a plus. I think it's been a big plus. When my 12-year marriage to my university spouse fell apart and she left, it affected me so much I broke out in hives for the first time ever in my life. So that's some significance there. And I, looking back, think I was probably clinically depressed for a couple of years, but all came out of it. So I think it's been really helpful. I also am a Vietnam veteran and carry PTSD from engaging in the Southeast Asian war games, dropping bombs from B-52s on people down there. So I wasn't down in the mud and the muck and the mire, but cerebrally, I know what was going on and that unforgivable acts. And it kind of had to do some work around that, which didn't happen later, the work, but my doorway out was my affirmation that I'm not doing that anymore. And the work I've chosen to do since then is life affirming, with a massage therapist and a hypnotherapist, and the pagan connection to earth-oriented spirit and the people involved is definitely very affirmational, life affirming, and a relief from all of that. So it's all been very positive, and it's widened my horizons in what to acknowledge goes on with other people, rather than being in a narrow, self-righteous, holier than thou kind of thing. It's like, well, wait a minute, I mean, I don't deny getting that way about certain things that aren't as free and open as my perspective, but I think it's been really, really good for me, good for my kid's mom, good for my children growing up that way. Even my son, who I was talking to recently, the younger child, Rowan, he's not following the path actively at this point, but he's really good with having had the background and upbringing that he has had, and he's a delightful young man. So, and again, he has a wider, interesting. Humor is a big thing in that family of mine. We rely on that a lot. But both of my kids have they're self-aware, they're introspective, and they are attentive. They pay attention to what's going on around them and are curious. And I'll go back to those books. They're both real readers, although my son's not reading so much now, but he is a reader, and he knows how to do that and does it when he chooses to. So I think the background of being around people of varying lifestyles, let's just use that word, growing up, helped broaden their minds and mine as well. So that's all really good. So I think it's all been very, very healthy. A little interesting to have to deal with the fact that you're not quite like, in some of your attitudes and behaviors, a lot of everybody else. Can be challenging. But oh well.
Yeah, I share that background with them, that I was never indoctrinated with the humans are flawed from the outset myth.
Well, we are, but that's another whole.
Not because there's a guy in the sky telling us so.
No, we just bubble stuff up a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, last question here. Do you have any advice to seekers on the path?
Read widely. Talk to people. Talk to more people. Talk to other people. And how you talk to them varies, of course. But look widely to see what arena of knowledge / wisdom / inquiry lights your fire, if you will. I have said to people, because your parents have a particular spiritual orientation, it's like the worst reason for you to take it on yourself. They are not authoritative necessarily. And so go find what resonates with you. And that can be a fairly long process sometimes, with false starts in different places. You try the hat on, and you look in the mirror and say, this might work. And then you get home and you say, I'm not going to wear this hat. I don't really like them, or shoes or whatever. But you walk into the shop and, you're riveted by, that's my hat. And you get that hat, and that's the hat you wear. And people recognize you. I didn't recognize you. You weren't wearing your hat. I've actually had that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Various hats. So yeah, I've never really been drawn to a lot of other pantheons. However, in my personal work, the names I've been told that I can use to some particular energy forms or aspects of my psyche, however you want to look at that, from masculine and feminine, come from two different pantheons completely. But the attributes of each are found in different deiforms in different cultural pantheons. But these are the ones they said, you can call me by this name. And again, because we are a wide red group of folks, generally speaking, some of us may take a very strict path as a devotional one. I remember early on running into a lot of Dianic witches who were, that's it. nothing else, you know, boom. And okay, but like I said, so my reading mythology from Norse. So I have my male aspect, thunderbolt wielding male energy aspect. Picks the Norse, give me that Norse name, but in my research it ties into the Hindu pantheon. Hey, there are thunder top lightning throwers in just about every, including the Judeo-Christian one. So that's fine. Breaker of obstacles, you know. Okay. And the other, I got the name coming out of the Japanese pantheon, which I'm not drawn to at all, but Kuan Yin's become very popular in our contemporary culture. And those qualities are also found in other feminine, nurturing, healing, kindness deiforms in other pantheons. But so I have Thor and Kuan Yin. Okay, fine. I mean, and that doesn't mean I have all of Thor and all of Kuan Yin. Those are the names that came through to me in finding and working with the very specific aspects, manifestations of feminine and masculine spiritual energy. So,
And you don't find that there's any clash between the Japanese and the Norse energies working together?
because they're personal aspects of me, if you will, no, because I'm not following either a Nordic heathen path per se, nor a Japanese indigenous path. So yeah, I mean, I wrestle with it. Oh, cultural appropriation. Yeah, I smudge with sage and cedar. I blow tobacco smoke on things. I am part of a sacred fire community, and we make offerings that were granted to us by the Huichol Indians of Mexico, because they say that, well, you guys have lost your connection with the land, has been broken, and you don't have intact local indigenous offerings to use to connect to the heaven, to the spirit world through fire. You can use these offerings, which are acceptable, and they will take your prayers where they need to go. So in that event, to which I go monthly, and more often, they're offering tobacco, cocoa beans, chocolate, copal resin, which is like myrrh and frankincense, and I mentioned, and wood. And those are legitimate offerings. When I'm doing work in other realms, I'm pouring libations of wine and crumbling cakes. At a recent major ISIS event, yay, I did personal offerings of spices. I have a history of cooking, and I had an abundance of rare and precious spices. So I took a number of those and mixed up an offertory spice blend that I put on the altar, and then would sprinkle on the ground when we were doing the personal offering portions of that. So, you know, I'm not, and that's a pantheon that I'm not drawn heavily to the Egyptian lore, but I recognize it as valid as any other. Which brings us interestingly to my pagan roots. When I started out, the big quest was to prove prehistoric authenticity, if
Right.
you will. This stuff all goes back to primordial roots, pre-Christian, blah, blah, blah. And well, yeah, and many of the folks that inspired us did a lot of, they gathered things from other sources than that. And getting to the Gardnerian, and you know, he borrowed stuff from the Masons and the Golden Dawn and Rosicrucian and so on and so forth, and other people, and he made stuff up. And so now, interestingly enough, we find young people who have the adage, well, anything that comes along in this path, somebody made it up sometime, so we'll just make it up. And
Right.
so I have to say, yeah, but also if you realize that if you just make it up, you may find stumbling blocks, energetic stumbling blocks, a etheric kickback, we were following some protocols that had been, early on, that had been established by folks who've been working for a while. And I'm going to talk about Starhawk here, about how anything that you build up energetically, you must dismantle energetically. Otherwise, if you leave those fragments hanging around, there's an impact from those. And we had a circle event, and it turned into kind of a party thing. Of course, you've never experienced that, I'm sure. And we ended up, this is again very early on, and we ended up saying, okay, we'll just move the altar over to the side so we got more room, and turn up the music, and we're dancing and hooting and hollering and having a great time. But we didn't deconstruct the energy structure that we had built up. And people reported being miserable and not heavily, but kind of messed up afterwards. That there was like spiritual energy hangover that people reported, saying, oh, that's a good lesson. So, okay, henceforth, cautionary me, okay, here's the thing. Step by step, build it up. Step by step, take it down. Don't. It's like make sure the fire is put out when you're out camping. Hello.
Right.
We have time for another anecdote?
Yeah, let's go ahead. One more, and then we'll wrap this up so it doesn't get too long.
Yeah. Okay. Again, a small group of us, some of the original players and some additional players later on. We're doing a quest through the elements and the directions, and it was an initiatory path. And we were one aspect of it was a trek up to She Who Watches and the petroglyphs up the gorge, and making a pilgrimage to that. And we went hiking up the railroad tracks from a county park, because at that point in time, you weren't allowed into the petroglyphs without a park guide and stuff. We've been there before a lot over the years, but now it's like, okay, so we have to kind of, would you pardon the expression, stealth operation come in during the night. So we're hiking up the railroad tracks, and there was a desiccated carcass of a roadkill, train-killed coyote we encountered, and said, oh, I'm going to take the tail of the coyote. Oh, coyote. Oh. So taking that with us, and we went and did our thing, and then we're coming back, and there was a place that our friend Mark called the Place of the Winds, and he'd been there before. And it's a place that forms a pool in the basalt, water in the winter, but in the summer it's a meadow. And we were like halfway between. So he said, I want to show you this place. So we go up there, and there's all these dead tree things around the meadow. So we said, oh, cool. Let's just build a thing. So we start pulling in, branches and bits of dead trees, and we're constructing this artifice, this towering structure, just kind of cool, like you do at the beach. You build a fort of logs and whatnot. So we're building this thing up, and we're immersed in a whole pagan charged weekend thing. So we're actually in mode, if you will, and say, oh, that's kind of cool. It looks kind of like a sitting dog, muzzled up in the window, whatever. Hey, let's attach the coyote tail to it. Did that, and the energy went boom. Hackles went up on the back of everybody's neck. Goose flesh, just and that which had been inadvertently invoked and evoked was not within our purview. It wasn't something that we were equipped to manage, and it freaked us out a little bit. We said, we need to not be engaged in this. So we actually kind of did an orderly retreat and fled. A couple of years later, I was back up there again in a different season, and it had all, of course, dissipated. But that was an interesting thing to realize, that you can unleash, if you will, aspects that you may not be prepared to handle, which is why you have circles and protection. And we hadn't done that. We had just said, oh, let's just build this thing and do randomly charge it up. And so
Yeah, so what was the result of the coyote energy attached to the structure?
well, it freaked us out, and we left it alone and said, okay, we're not in charge of this. We're not going to mess with it anymore. We're going to leave.
So it felt
which
it kind of felt gloomy or attacky, or
no, just much more overwhelmingly powerful than we had any realization that we were dealing with. We weren't trying to do a big power thing, and it was like, oh, you can feel physically in your autonomic nervous system reaction, and oh, there's power going on here, and like, okay, we're not equipped right here, right now, to deal with this in any way that's appropriate. We need to just sort of bow out, back out of the space, and leave that power with nature, and not try to mess with it overly. And so that's kind of the cautionary thing. Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it.
right. That's what I was thinking.
So
that was I love that story. That's a great one. So let's go ahead and wrap this up, because so that was James, and I hope you enjoyed getting to know him. And there will be some links that I'm going to add at the end of this video. And stay tuned for the next interview that I'm going to do. I think will be next week sometime. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.